Playoffs are set for teams in District 2-5A, and for the first time in 35 years, not one 5A team from Lubbock or Amarillo will be in it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Football Fever, brought to you by LISD TV and LoneStarVarsity.com, your source for high school football here on the South Plains. Travis Cram here and George Watson from the Avalanche-Journal to take you along through the next week. And George, getting into the first game, of course, Monterey and Lubbock High, it was all about pride, but Monterey gets their redemption and gets the Silver Spurs back. Yeah, big win for Monterey, getting the Spurs back after a one-year absence. I know they were really looking forward to this game, no matter what, whether the playoffs were on the line or not. They were really looking forward to this game after the disappointment last year, and you could really tell by the emotion that was being showed, not only by Monterey, but by both sides, as that game went along. You could tell this is a big rivalry game, and Lubbock High wanted to keep those Spurs as much as Monterey wanted to get them back, but in the end, Monterey just too much offense, and I thought the key, they get an onside kick in the first quarter that gives them a 10-0 lead. Lubbock High is able to weather that. It's a 2014 game for Monterey at halftime, but then Monterey comes out and takes their first possession down and scores, gets a two-point conversion, and so it's a two-touchdown game. They get another onside kick, a gutsy call by James Morton because he's got the momentum at that point. You really, it's a point where, coaches say you can kind of drive the dagger in the heart there, and they did absolutely that. They get an onside kick, they go down and score again, get a turnover, get another score off of that, and suddenly a game that was 6 points at halftime is over at 42-14. A big win from Monterey, and I know a big deal to get those Spurs back. James Morton was really clutching them pretty good when he came out of the locker room after that game, and a big win for Monterey. 52-21 for the Plainsmen in that one. I think the biggest stat that stands out, you talked about running, 503 rushing yards in that game for the Plainsmen. Of course, they'll be taking on Coronado this next week in the final week of the season. Coronado took on San Angelo Central, trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. Didn't work out the same way with everyone else that won in the area, but Shaney Wilkinson, again, a big game, and Coach Leach might have to start looking at him. You would think, I don't know if he fits the prototype that Mike Leach, because he's kind of like in 6'2", 220-pound guys that can break away and win you a game with 1 second left right now. So, but Shaney Wilkinson is the type of player that could really help a Tech offense, I think, just because he has a nose for the football. He runs very good routes, and he catches the ball. Rarely ever drops the ball when it's when it hits him right in the hands. And he does a good job with yards after catch, and he had another good game, 9 catches, 133 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And there were 3 touchdowns that came at a key time because it's a 17-14 game with Central. At that point, Central's kind of got a little momentum, and all of a sudden, Shaney Wilkinson, they get 3 touchdowns there. They're pretty much in control, and then they get a couple of fumble return or a couple of defensive scores there that allow them to expand the lead out. So Coronado wins a big game going away, but it was a close one right there for a while, and Wilkinson was a big part of that, with his touchdown catches. And of course, the rest of the scores in District 2-5A, Midland Lee 49-21 over Amarillo. Lee now, of course, taking that 4th spot in the playoffs. Odessa gets a 52-27 win over Midland. Permian keeps their undefeated season going, 36-8 over Tascosa. Estacado taking on Dalhart this past weekend and trying to keep their playoff hopes alive in 1-3A. That'll come down to this next week's show up, but tough 6-point loss for them. Yeah, a tough loss for Estacado, having to go on the road, at Dalhart, which is one of the things that we talked about with this district is the travel that's involved. But and it was a tough game from Estacado for a standpoint. I mean, they offensively they played a better game than Dalhart did defensively. They scored 21 points. Two of Dalhart's scores came on special teams plays, a kick return and a punt return. So it's a game that Estacado very well should have won. A very tough game up there, but it sets up some stuff. They're not completely out of it yet, but they're not completely in control of their own destiny, which we'll get into later, with this week's games. But yeah, a tough loss for Estacado. Kind of interesting, they started off well in district. Now they've lost 2 straight, and it's kind of put them in this position. They've got to kind of get back to what they were doing, making plays, there, especially at the end of the game, and making the plays that get them a lead and allow them to keep that lead. But yeah, tough loss for Estacado this week. Of course, the other team in that district that's controlling it right now, the Cooper Pirates, they are rolling 4-0 in that district after starting out 1-4. So, or 1-5, I believe. Is that right? 1-4, I believe. 1-4. So they roll again, 28-11 over Borger, a big game for the Pirates. Yeah, another game for another big win. I'm just impressed with what Cooper has done over the last 4 weeks. I mean, they didn't play all that well during the non-district season. I mean, but they were playing some tough teams. They were playing Idaloos and Mule Shoes and people like that. And so they were taking their lumps, but it was a tough schedule as well. Now they've kind of gotten into this schedule, and it's obvious to see that with their
their speed and the way they're playing right now, they are the best team in this district. And at 4-0 and a share of the district championship, I mean, that's not a fluke. They go in, they play Level Land this week, and a big game for them to kind of win that district title outright for the first time since 2005. But yeah, Cooper's just playing outstanding football. They're playing good defense, playing and got a solid offense with Richardson at quarterback, and you know, Tyler Sutton's making some contributions. DJ Ware at running back has been pretty good now. So it's a big game, or a big win for Cooper over Borger this week.
And I think you hit right on it. Obviously, a lot of changes for Cooper. They've been playing a lot better since the pre-division games.
Right.
But Richardson, obvious factor in that, and the fact that they're having over 300 rushing yards in all these games, that coming from quarterback with his play. Friendship, still undefeated, going through 4-4A. They get the win over Abilene Cooper, probably their biggest game, biggest test before they hit the playoffs, and they squeak out of that one.
Yeah, you know, it's probably a game that, you know, I'm sure that they pointed to, I'm sure Cooper pointed to all along, you know, and it was one of those that, you know, all of us in the media at the beginning of the season said, oh, well, Cooper's going to win this district, you know, even though Friendship has kind of dominated this district, but they've got so much to replace. But Friendship went out there and just played, you know, from what I could tell, I wasn't there, I was listening on the radio, just played with so much emotion and grit and desire, and they went out and they literally punched Cooper in the mouth and told him, hey, this is our district. You're going to have to come through us. And Cooper couldn't do it. You know, obviously they didn't have Eamon Pimpton. They're a good running back. He was still hobbled by an ankle injury, but they've got plenty of athletes that could take his place. Friendship just didn't let them have it. Allowed 96 yards rushing, 163 total yards. That is a tribute to that defense that has just played outstanding all year. Credit Friendship. This is their district, and they proved it this year.
And, of course, we're going to learn a little bit more about that defense when you visit with Don Black here in a second, their defensive coordinator. In 3-2A now, Idalou coming back off that Littlefield loss a couple of weeks ago. They look like a team that's going to control that second place in there. They get a 38-7 win over Abernathy, a big game for Sean Reagan, who suffered in that game against Littlefield with 4 interceptions, but now it looks like they just didn't even miss a beat.
Yeah, it was a big win for Idalou. It kind of gave them a little breathing room now. You know, Littlefield's still on top of the district. Idalou is number 2, and they've both clinched playoff spots. At least everybody else in that district, which we'll get to later, kind of to fighting for a playoff spot. But yeah, Idalou looks like, you know, since the Littlefield game, they've kind of gotten it rolling. Like you said, Reagan is doing well. Another good game, but you know, for defense to be able to hold Abernathy to 7 points, and especially the way they run the football, that was huge for them. It looks like they're kind of picking it up and going to get on a roll here going into the playoffs.
Another score from around that area, Roosevelt 40, Shallowater 20. Brian Pointer, a big game in that one. We'll learn a little bit more about him in the show. And then New Deal 31-21 over Hale Center, so they stay in the hunt for stay undefeated in that district. All right, when we come back, George will give you our City Player of the Week right here on The Fever.